Viva Riva, which is interesting, which is set on the streets of Kinshasa. And remember when Brenda Bolili came out? And in fact, we were in this very studio.
Was Mufasa from Kinshasa?
I don't think.
Is that not right?
It's not.
Should have been.
Should have been.
I am Mufasa.
So, but just don't. Okay. So this is a completely different beast to Brenda Bolili, although there is some music on the soundtrack that obviously at one point I thought, oh, is that actually Staff Brenda Bolili playing? And if you haven't seen Staff Brenda Bolili play, you must do. They are really fantastic. So this kind of does for the streets of Kinshasa what City of God did for the streets of Rio. And it was a very big domestic hit. It's a sort of sleazy action thriller that draws inspiration to some extent from the blaxploitation genre. It is very much an exploitation movie. There's a guy, Riva, turns up in town. He's got a whole bunch of oil, petrol, gas that he has lifted from the from the Angolans. There's some gangsters who are after him. He then has a thing with a woman who is attached to a local gangster, so everyone's after him. Everything's closing in. And meanwhile, the cameras are running around doing the sort of thing they always do in exploitation movies, which is that every 5 minutes there's a scene in a strip club. There's a very sort of tough commando woman who turns out to be a lesbian. There's somebody else who's connected with this guy who's got stashes and stashes of stuff and fast cars. So it's one of those interesting things in which, Roger Corman always said that thing about the best way to encourage a new generation of filmmakers is to create an exploitation film industry. In fact, David Putnam agreed with this. Get an exploitation film industry, take people who want to be the next Antonioni and get them to make Secret Lies 2. Well, in the case of this, it is clearly a full-on exploitation movie. It's done very well in its domestic territory. There are things about it that are interesting. I mean, it's not world-changing in any way. I mean, it didn't set me on fire in the same way that Brenda Bolili did. But it is a good, solid, sleazy, trashy but flashily done exploitation gangster movie with all the tropes of blaxploitation cinema, all the tropes that you expect from that kind of movie. People acting in bizarre ways with violence, gratuitous nudity, ridiculous plot tie-ups, and it satisfies on that level.
Right, so we have Wimbledon coverage coming up at 5 minutes to... It's 5 minutes to 1 now. 1 o'clock we'll be live at Wimbledon. You've been asking for... was this on your blog?
Yeah, because I said, look, the show's got to move. It's got to move for tennis.
Tennis in movies.
Good tennis movies.
So these are people these are your bloggers.
Our bloggers, I like to think.
You're faithful, okay. Well, I mean, a number of these have come up, in previous years when we've been doing this. A number of people have always mentioned Vijay Amritraj being in Octopussy.
Exactly, yeah.
We're strangers on a train.
Strangers on a train, yeah. Because he's a pro tennis player, isn't he? And the guy who comes to him says he's got the idea for the perfect murder, and so it all plays out around that world. So that is actually right.
That's from Natalov.
That's Natalov. That's Nat Seegeloff. Nat Seegeloff, who wrote I'm sure that's Nat Seegeloff because that used to be his email address. Who wrote the definitive biography of William Friedkin. It's a very good book, Hurricane Billy.
Ewan Griffin says there's no tennis involved, but in Funny Games they're dressed for it.
Yes, Funny Games is for me the definitive nasty tennis movie because the kids, the horrible psychos, turn up in tennis whites.
My Earler, I think that is, if my memory serves me correctly, there's a tennis sequence in The Exorcist. Is that right?
There is.
When I say sequence, there's a bunch of people playing tennis in the background.
Yeah, and one of those people is playing tennis when Detective Kinderman and Father Karras are having the conversation about the death of Burke Dennings, and one of the people playing background is, I believe, at the time, Bill Blatty's wife, because he's had more than one.
Okay, just glazing over slightly.
Sorry.